Okay, good morning everybody. I don't know whether everyone is aware that this panel session is in English. Okay, and we have a nice group of French people around the table here who are going to speak English for you and for the web TV. I have the great opportunity to welcome here three representatives from the industry, the vehicle, the manufacturing industry, because the subject of this panel is understanding the sweet spot for hydrogen-based mobility, example of usages and business cases. And we will try to open the debate to see how we go forward in the future. First of all, on my left-hand side, Julien Etienne is representing the PFA. Oh, sorry. Jean-Luc Brossard, very good start, thank you. Jean-Luc Brossard is representing the PFA, Plateforme Automobile Française. He will tell us what it is about. Julien Etienne from OMNIUM. And everyone knows Fabio FERRARI from SYMBIO, Michelin, Faurecia. Great. First of all, Jean-Luc, can you tell us in really few words what is the PFA and its mission?
Thank you very much. So what is the PFA? The PFA is an automotive platform in France in order to represent all the automotive industry and the mobility industry in front of the government of the European Commissions. So we represent around 4,000 entities, which like also the big OEMs, like Group Renault and Group PSA for the car builders, but also system suppliers like Valeo, Michelin, Faurecia, OMNIUM, and we represent nearly 400,000 employees, and we have an investment of 6 billion euros per year in R&D.
So it's a big industry, and this industry, and your group more precisely, is making some homework to develop, to understand the market and to develop a certain vision. And the purpose of your presence here is the rollout of a new version of the hydrogen roadmap. Am I correct?
So what we are doing is to give the perspective of our industry with a vision to all our industries in order for them to be able to make their strategy. And we are making common studies. And for instance, we are making common studies on the energy mix for the 15 further years. And we define what is the market. These studies are built on TCO approach, total cost of ownerships. And we compare X energy in order to understand what will be the boat of the car, of the vehicles, of the mobility of the customer in the future. And we are looking, giving the data coming from all the industrial, from the automotive industry, I said Renault, PSA, OMNIUM, Faurecia, but also from the energy industry, from Total, Engie, and so on. And those data is in a closed room with a complete confidentiality between the actors, and we consolidate the result and give all the results, and we can define what is the market share for each type of energy in the mobility. And that's the reason why we see that there is some events that can give us the possibility to see a market for hydrogen, a first market in all the world, and we can speak also in Europe, and we will find less than 1% in the 10 years, but more than 2% in the early 2030. And it is very important to begin this market and to begin hydrogen development in France and in Europe. And for that, we make what we call the position paper. Mm-hmm. You may find this position paper today in the PFA site. It is a position paper on hydrogen, and you can see all the difficulties of the technical issue we have to drive in order to achieve to a big market for hydrogen.
Okay. So you just published this new update because there was a previous one back in 2015?
Yeah, exactly.
Something like that, right?
Yeah.
So it's a clear and important update. It's published today.
It's published today, and you can find it on the site on pfr.auto research and development, and you will see under the vehicle with a low footprint, environmental footprint, you will see documents on the hydrogen. So you can find it in the PFA site. We have done this update because there are many reasons. The first reason is that we see that the politics take into account hydrogen in their deal in terms of neutrality, carbon neutrality, and we see that there is a great deal in Europe. We see that there is a RED II. There's a lot of political publicity that involve us in looking hydrogen solutions. We saw also some system suppliers who are coming actors and great actors in France, Plastic Omnium, Froisla, Michelin, SYMBIO. And we have seen also that there is an opportunity in terms of packaging, because now we are launching a lot of cars, electric cars, and hydrogen is a complementary solution for electric vehicles. And it is easier to make hydrogen vehicles with a base of electric vehicles.
Yeah, hydrogen is a different way of storing energy on an electric vehicle. We always need to remind that to everyone. So what are the main, the come outs of this?
The main issues. First, you have to have decarbonized or clean hydrogen. That means what is important, if you want sustainable mobility, you have to have in your mobility, on your vehicles, you have to have sustainable energy. So that means that hydrogen, like electricity, has to be clean, has to be green. This is the first thing. Then it has to be competitive, because as I said, we compare the different solutions of mobility, and our customer are choosing the mobility to the lower cost. So it is very important for us to be competitive, and there is a big gap to do in terms of hydrogen solution for mobility. We have to devise storage in terms of cost of 5. We have to divide also the price of the hydrogen at the pump, because it has to be green, but it has to be stockage, it has to be distributed and arrive at the pump at a very low cost. Today in our studies, we agreed in 2030, 2035 to a common cost at the pump of €7 per kilogram, but it is not enough. We have to go further and to reach in the 2030, between 2030 and 2050, when we want neutrality in terms of carbon in 2050, we need to go under €4 per kilogram.
So you think that a 5-time cost reduction factor is needed to go to the mass market?
Yeah, it's a key factor. It's
5 times, okay. Right, so it's going to be interesting how we are going to achieve that. Next point.
And another point is to work on packaging. I said we have the opportunity to use electricity vehicle in terms of packaging, but you know that if we're speaking of tank, of stack, it is very intrusive in the vehicle, and we want to have less intrusive solutions. So we have to work on polymorphic tanks. We have to make R&D in order to have lower volumes, in order to maintain the usage of the car, the usage of the bus. And the last point, if we look to our different solution, what we saw, it's the first market will be on light commercial vehicle for us in Europe, and on bus and taxis. And it is very important to work on this. And sometimes there is some solutions with intensive use, which hydrogen is a good solution, because as you know, you can't do anything with electric vehicle. Electric vehicles are not done to go fast and to go very, very long.
Okay, so basically, Fabio Ferrari, SYMBIO. Jean-Luc tells us that they clearly see some specific market segments in which hydrogen is going to come first. What is your own vision and perspective on that?
Well, you know, we started this company, SYMBIO, with 2 visions. The first one, as Jean-Luc said, in the energy transition, there was not so many solutions to store the sun inside the vehicle. And to store these renewable energies, the sun, the wind, into the vehicle, of course, batteries and hydrogen was a good solution. And starting from this point, we've seen that the commercial vehicle was the first market to address because it was easier to deploy this kind of solution. And with this vision, we started first by light commercial vehicles, because as you said, we need to install our solution on an electric vehicle, an existing electric vehicles, and there were not so many at this time. Now, the range of existing vehicles is increasing, but at this time there were not so many. And the second step was trucks. So to do so, we have developed the first Kangoo, and you have more than 300 Kangoo now on the road. We changed our position 2 years ago to become a supplier, and now Renault is reselling our solution. It was announced a few months ago. And now the Master, the new light commercial vehicle, a bigger one, is going to address the market. And of course, we are working on trucks for the next generation.
So you still have a strong focus on light-duty vehicles, but now the big power is coming, huh? The trucks, the buses, and...
Yes, yes. So the market will start by commercial vehicles. And of course, we think that because there will be an infrastructure, in 2013 or maybe a little bit before, we will see the first passenger cars that will come to the road. As you see today, the vehicles from Hyundai and from Toyota are used to make taxi, and you can see this taxi now in Paris. But once again, it's a fleet because it's easier to have the infrastructure for this kind of vehicle.
Okay, and what are the challenges that you are facing to accelerate and start to go in this trend for cost reduction?
The approach that was taken, for example, by the PFA is the TCO approach. And if you look at the TCO, it means that the vehicle has to be at the same price as a diesel vehicle, and the energy, same price as diesel. We are talking about €7 at the energy level. And for the vehicle, we are addressing this point to master the cost curve and to be sure that we are going to build hydrogen vehicles at the same price as diesel vehicles. And we know that it is really reachable. Today, to address this cost curve, of course, we have to improve the number of vehicles that we produce every year. But if we follow the production that Jean-Luc mentioned, I mean 2% of the car production in 2017, we know that it's doable to have a hydrogen car at the same price as a diesel vehicle.
Okay, so in terms of number of units for a company like SYMBIO, how many stacks does it represent by this time in 2030?
200,000 vehicles per year at this time, so not so much. It's compatible with the vision developed as a PFA.
And your own market share?
We think that we are going to address about 25% of the market share at this time.
Okay, it's a very interesting objective.
Yeah, and we want to be a leader. So of course, we are talking about France. It will be a worldwide company, not only distributing the solution in France.
So France, Europe first, but you also have planned to expand?
Yes, yes, in China and other Asian countries.
Okay, that's a good transition for our friend Julien Etienne from Plastic OMNIUM, because you are already a global company addressing many, many markets. Correct. And I would like to have first your own perspective on how this market is developing around the world and what is the impact for you as a company.
Yeah, I think it's important that we understand the way that the market is going to develop in France and what are the main drivers and the main challenges. I think one point that is critical for us to address is how the market is developing globally. What we see today is there is a very strong push, a very strong dynamic in Asia. We have OEMs who started quite a few years ago already in Japan, in Korea. But clearly the trend and the dynamic is increasing, is accelerating. These OEMs are going in volume already. And this is something that we as major tier ones need to address. I think it's critical that we address these markets and we address these volumes in order to reach the right level of competitiveness for the technology that we will need for the technology to develop and the market to develop in France and in Europe. So basically, we are a French company, we are a European company, we are European companies. I think our role here is to make sure that we work together and with the government to make sure that there are the conditions for a market to exist and to develop. At the same time, we need to use the opportunities and the volumes that we have somewhere else in the world to develop the technology, to come up with different products that will solve the packaging issues that you mentioned, to go up in volume, deploy or develop our industrial capabilities, lower the cost, and reach all of these targets that we need here through using the volume that exists globally, basically. It's clear that we need to be international. It's clear that we need to be in Asia. We need to be in China. The volume there is pushed very much by the government. We need to be addressing Korea, Japanese market in order to take advantage of our position as basically industry champions, global industry champions, and bring back this technology and this level of cost in Europe, where the market will be ready to take on.
Yeah, but because there is a difficulty. We have a domestic market that is not growing as fast as the Asian markets.
Correct.
And you are based in Europe, right?
Yeah.
So you cannot really rely on your domestic market to grow. So from day one, you are really thinking the big picture?
Yeah, we have to. I think, you know, we are a French company, but today we're involved. We have a very global footprint. So we make 60% of our turnover in production outside of Europe. We need to be global from day one. If we wait in Europe for the market to pick up, my worry is that by the time the market picks up, everybody back in China will have gone faster than us, and we won't catch the train. So we need to be leading the train right now. This is where large companies have an advantage. I think we have a very good position on this technology in France, and we have champions, global champions, that are able to address the market where it is today and make sure that when the market happens in Europe, these guys, local guys, will be the ones driving the technology in Europe.
Fabio, you want to comment? You have
just to add a comment on what Julien said. I think that we also need to have a local market to better start, you know, the way to go to China, for example. So I'm very happy to see, for example, the AME that was just issued in France. It will help us to have this local market and to test our product, to test the deployment, to test the TCO, to test the different business model in France before going outside. And if you see what China is doing, if you see what Korea, Japan is doing, it's exactly the same strategy. First, accelerate the creation of a local market and then go abroad and export their solution. So once again, in France, we're able to do the same thing, and I'm sure we'll have some help from Europe, and from France.
But if we want to develop a domestic market, we need to have the whole industry embracing that vision. And do you think that in your representation, everyone is really aware of the
yeah, I think so. Big deal? You know that in France, in terms of actors on the value chain, we have actors on each step of the value chain. Academics to the OEM coming from the system suppliers. So all the actors are in France. So it's very important to have a local market, and it will be the first step in order to globalize. So also our OEM, system supplier was for ACR, Plastic Omnium, Michelin said they want to go to this market and there is no problem. But also OEM will provide solutions with hydrogen in their vehicles. The problem is that when you decide a vehicle, you see it only 5 years after. So we will see at the beginning of the 2021, you will see new things.
So to make the conclusion, you all believe that we do have the right actors, industrials, to make it happen. So what's missing?
Well, I think what's missing right now is really a market. You know, we have the champions all along the value chain. We need to make sure that with initiatives like the AME, like the ECVs that we signed last year, we need to make sure that we communicate efficiently and we convince the authorities to create the right conditions for a market to happen. I think the whole filière is ready to go, and as you said, we have the chance to have champions all along the value chain, global champions all along the value chains. So we need to, and we are aligned between ourselves, I think. So we need to make sure that the ground for this market to grow is good.
Okay, Fabio?
Yes, exactly. So Julien said that we have all the players, we have things in place. So it's a matter of investment and local investment. Are we going to invest here in France or in another place? And once again, we have all the very good things in France to start this market and this investment to go abroad and to export our solutions.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. 20 minutes for such a vast subject is always difficult to tackle, but you have been doing well. Thank you very much, and talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.